we'll get to your second point, but on that one, there is a lot of conversation that the Indigenous population is one of the fastest growing populations in Canada. So I wonder if the first point you made will change in subsequent elections.
Which is part of what I expect going forward.
Sorry to derail you.
No,
there.
not at all. That's a great add-on, because it's one of the things, again, to kind of go back to the electoral reform change that I hope to see, that they can be empowered that way. The second thing is that it's an issue that is not simple in the solutions to them. And it's one that requires a lot more thinking. And I think as a result of that, it gets tossed aside, right? When you roll through an election, you want to put out policy that is easy to grab onto and sink your teeth in and have people go, yes, I agree with that.
Yeah, but it's a simple policy to say Indigenous children will be treated the same way as every other child in Canada. That's not complicated.
I absolutely agree. Where the layers, I think, come in that complicate it, and I don't want to get too much into the nitty-gritty of the specifics, but as long as you have a base set of laws like the Indian Act that inherently treats citizens of our country differently, you will always have unequal treatment. I'm absolutely, there are significant issues that we need to address on reserves. And I think, to me, that is a base point. But again, that piece of legislation hampers the ability so much for it to be that clear-cut solution. I agree, and if it were any other community facing that issue, it is an entirely different administrative process even. The municipal governments, as they're structured, have, there's a clear line, I guess I'm trying to say, to follow if it were something that happened in Toronto. The line is not as clear because of things like the Indian Act, that the solutions for some reason just dissipate. And it's unfortunate, but I think I worry that it's never going to change as long as you have two separate laws. I agreed. I thought that was one of Jagmeet's best points on the campaign trail, without question, because that was such an obvious response to
and
this
the
question.
reporter went back at him 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
And that was when Jagmeet did show, stayed calm and cool and collected and repeated his point. That, no, but we're going to fund it because we do it anywhere else.
Yeah, and that's the only problem, is that if it were Toronto, it would be easier because the red tape and the legislation they have to go through to get there is much different than it is to address an issue on a reserve. And that's just the unfortunate consequence.
I know, Ruth, when anybody's third in line, sometimes a lot of points have been made. But again, from your experience, certainly in our ridings in our area, we have a significant Indigenous population. So why is it that conversation doesn't take up more time in an election campaign? You can speak locally or again across the country.
Well, I've been here when I've seen issues that have been very sad to look at. Take our fishing issues here. And our local member of parliament didn't take a leadership role for the Native people during these times. And I think they find in our area there are issues that are being dealt with, and they affect how people are embracing this particular issue. The land claims. People who are running are thinking, well, I'll offend the people who are threatened by land claims. I mean, that's the reality. It's sad. It's very sad, and I think that we need to look at this, but that's a topic for another day.
No, but I think it's part of why we need our federal politicians to be talking about working with Indigenous communities, what the plans are, how to open the conversation, because I don't think we've been talking nearly enough about how we can have a better community.
There needs to be leadership.
Yeah.
But one thing that I will say, Six Nations, just outside Brantford, does not have drinking water, and a lot of it. So it's not just in the far north.
No.
It really is. It's hard to imagine that.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We'll see whether that comes up again with whatever kind of structure we go forward with government and minority, coalition, accord, whatever, and that will play itself out over the next couple days. And unfortunately, we won't be back together to talk about how that forms, but with some interesting thoughts on how the night went, I'm sure, and his own elation from winning. We're going to go to an interview now with Alex Ruff.
And I'm here at Heritage Place Mall with Alex Ruff from the PC Party, and we've got some results coming in.
Yes, so I'm a happy individual. I'm very glad that we've now been announced that I should win this riding.
And how do you feel about the campaign overall?
I'm very happy. Obviously, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of work by my volunteers, my family, everybody, the whole team that came out. And ultimately, the people made their decision, and so I'm a happy man.
One of the aspects about your campaign is that you stress very strongly that you are representing the people in your riding, as opposed to, I believe people over party.
Yeah, no, I'm a big believer. At any level of politics, any elected official, they have to represent the people that elected them first and foremost. You're part of a party system, so we got to work together. That's how you get policy through. But ultimately, looking at the results, I'm going to have to work from a position of opposition if everything comes through here the way it is that they're predicting. And my job is to be a strong voice for our riding and represent all the people here, not just the people that voted for me, but everybody. I can agree to disagree with them at times, but my job is to listen and to understand the concerns. And I'll be reaching out to my competitors to understand what they were hearing at the doors and their perspectives. And it's not, as I said, it's not that I'm necessarily going to agree with them, but I'm going to understand all the factors and all the aspects of any issues that are presenting us in Bruce Grey Owen Sound.
I certainly got that message when I attended the All Candidates meeting. But campaigning for a federal election is a journey, and I want to ask you, what did you learn about yourself through this process?
Well, I think I just reaffirmed some lessons that, my life experiences and my military career has prepared me for. I got the same question from my commanding officer when I returned from Afghanistan the first time, and he said, "What did you learn from that tour?" And obviously it was a combat mission. And one of the things I told him, without trying to sound boastful, is that my self-confidence is higher than it's ever been. And it's not that, you're going to succeed at everything you do in life. But it's the fact of the matter is that, my belief in myself, and it actually goes back long before then. Donald Ryby's passed away. He was my principal in Aaron Terre Elementary School. And I still have the poem memorized that Don challenged us as students there. And the poem is called Believe in Yourself. I would actually tell people to go out and Google it. The author's anonymous, but it's a great poem, and it's all about overcoming obstacles and believing in yourself, and you can pretty much achieve what your dreams are.
Well, that's amazing, and congratulations. We'll be looking forward to meeting you again, and enjoy the festivities tonight and celebrate.
Thank you.
Back to you, Dave.
Thank you, Mary Jane. You're watching your local results here on Rogers TV. We're just about to wrap it up, because this election is pretty well resolved. It's the very, very fine points that are not resolved. And unlike a contract, I'm not sure these are fine points that are going to upset the apple cart. The Liberals are on their way to not just a minority government, but a fairly strong minority government, stronger than I think a lot of people expected it would be. If there are two parties across the bottom of your screen that have to be disappointed, they are probably the Conservatives and the New Democrats. Andrew Scheer, in particular, has to face his membership in a leadership review next year, I do believe. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. A couple of quick things around the country. Out in Vancouver, Granville, Jody Wilson-Raybould is polling third right now. The independent at the center of the SNC-Lavalin affair chose to run as an independent. She's trailing. She's in third place. In Markham-Stouffville, Jane Philpott, who resigned with her friend, Jody Wilson-Raybould, from cabinet, and both were eventually expelled from the Liberal Party. She is also running third in Markham-Stouffville right now. about 2,400 ballots behind. Jody Wilson-Raybould in early balloting is only 55 ballots back, but she's in third. Ralph Goodale has been defeated in Regina, Wascana. Alexandre Bolis, I'm not sure I'm saying his name right. When Jagmeet Singh launched his Quebec campaign back in the spring, it was Alexandre Bolis who was the face of the NDP. He had no other candidates at that point. In all the ridings, you'd see vote NDP and a picture of Alexandre Bolis. Well, Alexandre Bolis has been reelected in Pointe-Ile, I believe is the riding. In Windsor West, a longtime provincial Liberal, Sandra Pupatello, attempted to be elected to the federal parliament, and she is trailing by about 1,800 votes, and I believe the New Democrat there has been declared elected. In our local ridings, you've seen all three Conservatives elected, the incumbent Ben Lobb returned, and two newcomers to the 43rd Parliament of Canada. Some quick final thoughts from Michael and the panel. Michael Harris.
Thanks, Dave, and lots of interesting results coming in, of course, and thanks to Mary Jane for that interview with Alex Ruff. It's interesting, he just was elected, but still not a huge smile. Maybe it's more relief than anything. Tired from a long campaign. But congratulations to all of the candidates who have won in the three ridings we've been watching, but across Canada. It's a lot of work putting a campaign together, and they've put the work in, and congratulations to those that didn't win as well. They've been putting that work in. We are nearing the end of our broadcast, so I'll go around. We'll start with you, Ruth. Maybe your impressions of tonight and what you're hopeful for in the next mandate, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4 years, what you think is going to happen, or something you hope comes out of this next government that is formed.
Okay. Well, I accept for the first time in a long time that the polls were right. I think that we're seeing exactly what they have predicted, but it's been a while, hasn't it, since that had happened. I think there's an opportunity to see a government that is more cooperative and is willing to listen, because if it's going to survive, it's going to have to be. And I have to say, as you did, congratulations and thank you to all the candidates who ran. It is a terrific job. It's really hard. Colleen and I know what it's like to try and run in this riding, and it is hard. It's diverse. It's huge, and it's tiring, but it's wonderful that we had such good candidates. They were really exceptional candidates, and I really liked what I heard from Colonel Ruff when he spoke tonight, and he talks about listening and working with people, and I think he showed something that will make us proud, with that he is our member if he continues to behave and believe that way.
All right, thank you, Ruth. And Shay, your thoughts going forward now?
Well, I don't want to sound like the broken record I seem to have been tonight, but I am hopeful on that electoral reform stuff with the way it's shaping up. I'm hopeful that we can see that. I know while you talked about the local Conservatives here being happy, at least from their candidate perspective, I think the big story past coalition is going to be Andrew Scheer. I think that leadership review is going to come through. He barely got the majority in the leadership vote to Maxime Bernier, whose party has gotten 1.7% of the vote across the country. So I'm a little worried on his front too. I don't know that Scheer will survive that leadership review. And because we don't know how soon another election is going to come through, the Conservatives would have to act incredibly fast to get someone new in. And I would expect, I had mentioned this before we came on to TV today to talk, but I said it felt like there were no real superstar Conservative candidates going forward for the election last time, for the leadership, I should say. Mainly because I think a lot of the bigger ones thought that this was going to be the result, that Trudeau would get 2 terms. I expect to see some big Conservative names back into that race. We mentioned the Peter MacKay, there was a story that kind of came out in the middle of that, and I would expect others to come through as well. So next to the coalition talk, I think that's going to be the big conversation after that.
Right.
And Colleen, maybe wrap it up for us on this side
I'll
of the wall.
wrap it up. Yeah. Well, congratulations to everyone who did this. It's just a big job, as you said, and it's good to be part of the democracy and see it all working. It's really important. I'm hopeful that this, whatever the government looks like, that they will get really busy on climate change and on Indigenous issues and on equity issues. That's what I'm really hopeful for in this upcoming Parliament for as long as it lasts, and that we have a return to a more working for everybody, regardless, bringing the diversity forward. We need the diverse opinions, the diverse policies and politics. We don't need a cat fight in Parliament. So maybe it'll work a bit better when not the power isn't all just in one spot.
And that's an interesting thought. We'll see. That certainly looks like what we're going forward with. And my message to all the successful candidates is not to forget that you've won an